All right, now that I've got my workspace cleared off, I'm ready to begin adding my mesh to the base of my wreath. So this method is very easy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the first length of mesh that I have here, and I'm going to put it curl side down. And what I mean by that is that it's going to curl that way rather than having the curls up. So I'm going to do it curl side down. I'm going to move the mesh out of the way a little bit so I have a little bit more room to work. And then the way that I do the ruffle method is I place my hands across the length of the ribbon on the bottom part, and I keep my thumbs in the middle. And then I'm just going to use my fingers to scrunch it all up. So I'm just pulling it closer to me. Haven't moved my thumbs at all. And then what that has given me is one ruffle. Okay, now what I want to do with this ruffle is I want to come and take it and put it in between the ties on one of my base stems here. And so I'm placing it as close as I can to the base of the wreath in the same direction that I ruffled it. And what that will do is that will keep any of my cut edges from being near the top. And that makes it so that you don't see any fraying in the wreath. And then now that I've got it placed in here, I'm going to pull tightly, and I'm twisting my twist tie twice. So I'm going to twist once, twist tight twice, and then I'm going to do the next one. Right, so I've pulled it off the pile. I'm going to keep it curl side down, putting my hands at the bottom of the base of the mesh, or the piece of the mesh, thumbs in the middle, and then just using my fingers to pull it towards me. Now, if you start to pull your mesh and you realize that you pulled it and it's not straight, that's okay. Just let go and start over. So again, down here at the bottom, hands in the middle, thumbs in the middle, pulling using my fingers. Scrunch it all up. Got a ruffle. And then I'm coming over to the next stem on my wreath base, again pushing it as close to the metal as I can, taking my tie, and then pulling tight, and I'm going to twist tight twice. Once, twice. And that's what I'm going to do for all 12 pieces. Now, it won't matter whether you begin with the middle like I have, or whether you begin placing on the outside. It really is just a personal preference. I like to start with the inside and then place my last ruffles on the outside. Which reminds me that I probably want to pull these ties down so that I can find them easier. ideally, I don't want them to be on top of each other. I really want their sides to butt up next to each other because I want this to be a full wreath. So I should be making sure that as I put these on, that I'm pulling them up and pushing them next to each other rather than laying them on top of each other. That will give me a fuller look on my wreath. This is the last one for my first round, and then I'll go around the bottom. So again, I'm pulling tight against the base. I'm going to twist once, twist twice, and then I want to push these up next to their neighbors. Now I'm ready to do my second layer of mesh. This is going to go along the outside ring of my base. So I'm looking for the opening. Pushing this in on top of the stem, as close to the wreath base as I can. And I'm pulling tightly and twist, twist. Again, I'm going to make sure that with all of its neighbors, it's just butting up against all of it. And that will give me a very full looking wreath base. Okay, so now I'm off to the next one, and I'm opening up the base, pipe cleaner, smushing that as tight as possible, pulling and twisting twice, and then taking that ruffle, making sure that it is up against its neighbors and not laying on top of its neighbors. Now, if you feel like there is some fraying on your mesh, you can always make sure that that is towards the inside of the base of the wreath. So if you're worried about that, you can always make sure that you're placing it so that you can't see that fray. Although this method is good for hiding the fray with the type of mesh that you've received from me. So for example, this piece, as you can see, it's starting to fray from being touched. It's just what mesh does. And then the other end is not frayed as much, so I'm just going to turn that ruffle around so that it's facing the inside of the wreath. And then I'm going to place it inside of its ties. Pulling tight, twisting twice. Looks like I've got two left. And this will be the last piece of mesh that goes on the base. Okay, so at this point we have a wreath that is between, depending on how you ruffled it, it should be between 22 and 24 inches wide, and it stands currently about 7 inches deep. Okay, so it's a pretty good sized wreath. Then in the next step, I'm going to have us take some of those ribbon tails and we're going to put them in the middle of each ruffle to add some additional color and some texture to the wreath.